Hi there, everyone. Mondion Astral Oracles. Thank you for being here, sharing, liking, subscribing, all that good stuff, commenting. And you can also follow me on Coffee and over at Mind the Wild. This is the channel where I channel natural energies. But I'm here to I'm here to talk about the hybrid program and the little people and the tricksters and everything. And I'm also going to check in with the Yahyel. It's gonna be a lot of fun, I think. Um, so it's one of those videos where I'm wearing a hat, and who wears a hat, right? So the leprechauns do, the elves and the gnomes. It's the season of these beings, and I don't know which culture you're from, but there's probably some mythology related to the presence of these little beings that I've talked about a lot in a lot of different contexts, and they come up in live streams and everything. And the occasion is partially that I caught a Menehune the other day in my aura that had hitched a ride from Hawaii. I'm fairly convinced. Um, so it's kind of been tinkering out there, and in some of my visionary experiments, plant medicine experiments, I've become aware that this guy was there, but he seemed to constantly elude me. And channeling, working with these entities, I'm usually I'm usually pretty accustomed to being able to communicate with them. So that bothered me a great deal, and I was kind of wondering. I was actually growing a little afraid of him. Just that feeling that there was something tinkering with my energy that I couldn't quite get a hold of. And then I got a hold of him the other day and learned his name. And of course, the thing is that when you learn their secret name, then you kind of got a lock on them. So you know where they are, and they can slip out of your attention like that. And that was connected to a lot of emotional release. So I've been going through a sort of dark night period, but it seems to have been very, very condensed. So just, getting a hold of him and removing that and becoming aware of like porous energy and dark influences, and then just releasing a lot of hurt and grief and anger, things like that. So crying a lot, right? And then this seems to have kind of propelled me into a state of no mind, like of less thought, of just dwelling in whatever is, which is a fairly pleasant state to be in. So that's of course good news, but it's interesting for me, like having to figure out what this little dude is about. Of course, Menehunis are the Hawaiian version, but I also got that he had kind of a lot of alien energy and this little people energy, and something also slightly ferret-like, like one of these mischievous, swift beings that constantly slip out of your attention. And that's the mythology around these beings, right? That they sort of keep you chasing that pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. And if your attention skips, then you get lost. Then they have you. So it's like being very attentive of them, holding them there, catching their name, and then they'll take you to the pot of gold. I think that's incredibly fascinating. How these experiments into working with entities in the ethers, and how they seem to confirm a lot of mythology, of folklore, of things that people have told each other and themselves out in the fields and living in the country through the ages, right? Like these beings have had a reality for people, and I think it's so interesting to come full circle and to kind of experience this in a new way. So I couldn't help myself but giving this this video a clickbaity title, which I promised I would never do, but it kind of relates to this tricksterous energy that I'm trying to explain and shed a light on in this video. So the question is, what is up with these aliens, with these little people, with these trickster energies, the fairies, the elves, and the hybrids, to my mind, because there seems to be a very vibrational equivalency. Is my clear experience as a channeler from these beings and then into the grays and the hybrids and these beings. And so the question I'm posing is kind of, is Bashar lying to you? Because I come across this idea of first contact a lot, and my impression is that it's often something people have picked up from Bashar, where he's promised them to that, oh, next year will be first contact, this will be the beginning of first contact. And I just love to examine this idea and shed some light on it, because as I've discussed before, what is first contact? Like, at what level does the communication that we're having with these beings become something that you can say, oh, this is it, this is the flicking of the switch, this is the either or, where now we are in contact with them and we weren't before, because we've already been communicating for a long time. And then let's examine some of the pointers of what this guy is saying to people who listen to it. I have much love for Bashar, and I think like he has such an interesting energy, and I've been recently been listening to some of the stuff again, and can easily see why it fascinated me so much in the beginning, and really is something that people have a lot of use for. But be very, very mindful of, be very attentive of the details in what it is he's communicating, because he also says that he is you. And if he is you, then what's happening is, of course, not the first outer contact. It's you coming in contact with an element of yourself that you consider separate. He also says that the way they travel is that they teleport, right? Like they just appear where they want to be, which would also imply that this has more of a quality that we would, in our human experience, associate with the human soul. That is the dreamlike ability to become present everywhere, what we also sometimes call astral projection, right? Where we're able to appear wherever we want to, in the ethers, in the upper and lower layers of reality, at will. So this will also imply that, well, this first contact is simply them coming into a more manifest layer of reality than they're already in. Then he says an interesting thing. I was just listening to an old video. He says that he asks people to trust him, and I don't know how long you've been alive, but at least I'm jaded enough to know that people who ask me to trust them are exactly the people that you should never, ever trust. Trust is something that's earned, and if people are very trustworthy, it wouldn't really occur to them to have to convince people of it, because why would people even assume that a trustworthy person would deceive them? That's not something that registers logically, unless you're fairly convinced that this is something that I need to say. So that also makes me slightly skeptical of the agendas of these beings. And then I simply think that, just taking spirituality into account, knowing what it is the soul is doing in here, which is kind of becoming aware, trying to grow unity between different separate layers by expanding consciousness. It seems to me like an extreme cop-out to have these kind of Armageddon events that all of the sudden would switch that process, which is going through a lot of turbulence, turmoil, and everything, right? I'm sure you know that from your own life. But to switch that into something where it's just, oh, now you're being served by aliens from above, and things will no longer be as difficult for you. It doesn't really seem to play out that way, reality. Unfortunately not, because if there weren't contrast to it, then why would we then why would we even be playing the game, right? It does require that level of challenge that we are engaged with. And I think that's really what's going on when he's promising first contact. I think these entities, these beings, are essentially manifestations that come out of the human collective unconsciousness to teach us things that we are unaware of and shift us into new layers of awareness. And that has happened a lot of times in human history, where one mythological, cosmological framework replaces another, and then people work within this, stretching its bounds until it doesn't really work anymore. So we're probably all Poseidon atheists, right? There's none of us that really truly believe in Poseidon as anything else that like a symbolic expression of something. But at a point in history, these were, of course, like a steady mythological frame that were meaningful for people to interpret them into, and then they move into, the natural philosophers and the classical period, and we're still at a time where someone like Socrates can be put to death for beginning to question these things. But as we move to the end of antiquity, it's pretty obvious that like nobody is really taking these ancient deities seriously as they were in the Homeric era or something, where it's like, oh, you need to fear Zeus. Like they were probably more at this point in the 300s, like, oh, Zeus is like a metaphor for something, or somebody we tell stories about, and like the really hardcore believers in the Greco-Roman pantheon were few and far apart. And then, out of Judaism, out of the Hellenistic cultures of the Eastern Empire and all that stuff, begins to sprout, of course, a lot of new different traditions that are competing for people's attention and seems far more meaningful, that have a lot to do with monotheism, for instance. So that to me is essentially what's going on with the hybrid program. It's my best explanation, at least. Like, don't take my word for it. I'm just a dude with a woolly cap who channels, right? But that's but that to me seems to be a very convincing explanation of what's going on. It's something that we're concentrating and condensing as a layer of reality that's incredibly meaningful for us to stir us into our full potential. And in that way, I think, in the same way that then these monotheistic cults have been promising us the apocalypse and stuff for I don't know how long, and it's still not coming, right? I think first contact sort of has that quality, that it's the idea of telling the kids who are constantly going, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Yeah, yeah, we're there in 10 minutes, right? And then they shut up for 30 minutes and then they begin again. And then you go, oh yeah, but you didn't factor in. And because kids are relatively stupid from the perspective of the adult, right? Like, because we're relatively, relatively easy to get to believe things from the perspective of these disincarnate intelligences who are really expressions coming out of higher mind. Then they have a new explanation of why is that, and soon you'll see the spaceships, and just go out there and look, because what they're actually doing is that they're stirring this layer of excitement, and that's of course always what he's returning to, right? It's kind of follow your passion, follow your excitement, as you of course are very well aware if you know the material. But that got me thinking also in relation to the season about Santa Claus. So what's up with Santa Claus and Santa's workshop, right? Because, well, what is this but a place where small, weird, benevolent entities are fashioning presents, like material promises for children, in order to stir their fantasies and excitement and get them in the proper spirit for Christmas. And that's of course the weird thing, that this is a story that we intuitively understand, even in a fairly skeptical age, that, well, this is somehow helpful to children to believe, right? Like, if we can get them worked up about the miracle of Christmas, that will in and of itself make that day magical for them. And it's this magic, it's this wonder that these disincarnate entities, wherever they may come from, that they're trying to stir. And I think that's a very beautiful perspective on it, because that's kind of, again, the golden treasure. It's the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, and the rainbow keeps moving. The goalpost keeps moving. So don't trust that you'll ever catch the rainbow, but do trust that if you keep looking for it and you stay very attentive, you let this become a kind of monomanic obsession for you, then it will materialize. It will come to you. And that is what this very beautiful teaching that like, God bless him, right? Bashar and all these other hybrid entities that they're putting forward. And then, of course, if you obtain that, like if you really align with what you're excited about, and you're excited about that excitement, and you get to unfold that, then who cares about spaceships or whatever, right? Whether you get to shake hand with an alien, or however many fictitious hybrid children you got living on spaceships that somehow exist both in a parallel dimension and in this one, that doesn't really matter, as long as you are coming into the magic of existence, right? The miracle of Christmas Day. Seen from the eyes of a child that's excited about the gifts that Santa brought them. So I think it's this deep psychological game that we are playing with ourselves in very helpful, beautiful, wonderful ways, and to sort of make well, the answer to the clickbaity question I posted in the beginning clear, then no, I don't think they're lying to us, but I do think that they address us at the level of consciousness where we're at. And a thing I notice very often in working with people in sessions at the live streams is that I will kind of have a different impulse on whether or not is this true or not, will usually be the question that I'm asking while the channeling is going on. And I hear the entities going like, yeah, it's true enough, right? And what they're doing is, instead of having this right or wrong psychoanalytical point of view where it's like, oh, we need to convince this person of what's the truth of their life and something, they're trying to take the positive momentum that people have poured into something, perhaps even the obsession that they've kind of developed about something that they feel they need in order to be happy, and then to steer it in a direction where that momentum actually leads them into their higher state of being, their higher self, the thing that they actually want, the place that they need to go. And I think that's a very, very beautiful way of working with things. It's fairly tricksterish, but that's the way the mercurial realms work, right? That they are kind of, every time you try to get a hold of it, it's something else. And what would be the fun if you were just stuck with a lump of lead, right, rather than some kind of magical substance, that quicksilver, that seems to reshape itself every time you try to work with it. And that's really the true nature of the human spirit in a lot of ways, as it keeps growing and expanding. So I hope you're also feeling the allure of the magic and the magic of this season, however you're celebrating it. And then I think I'll turn it over to the Yahyel, my guide Inyak. It's a long time since I've worked with them in public, and I haven't done it much in private either, because I've had a hard time also squaring this energy. What are they? What are they about? And what do they want? But the funny thing is also that he's one of the entities I'll channel along with a few others to really convince myself that I'm channeling, because it's so distinctly another vibration for me. Like it's so distinctly something that's definitely not me, and that I do not understand where it's coming from. And that to me, of course, is the magic of why I freaking love channeling, why I keep thinking it's a meaningful path to be on, and a meaningful tool to explore consciousness with, and to try to connect ourselves in awareness. So much love to you out there, and yes, may magic find you in this season. Yes, 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 yes. Hello, human beings. Hello, and greetings to you. So many greetings to you we have to offer. I call myself Inyak of the Yahyel, and I'm so happy to be joining you this day. I am joining you from a different layer of reality, that is true. I am joining you from a layer of reality that you may begin to consider that is actually phasing into your existence. So the reason our friend here is contacting us is also to get our perspective on the points that he have just raised, because we would like to explain to both him and to all of you that of course we are working within the framework of human limitations. We are also working within the frameworks that we ourselves have established for being able to communicate with you, then for being able to unfold our own projects into this reality. And so, if you are to think of this idea of the first contact, this wonderful idea that we will soon be joining each other in a far more stable exchange, in a far more solidified and, we could say, non-rarefied way of being, something that's more akin to your everyday reality. Well, what is going on with this everyday reality is that as we have been communicating, many of us from the hyper program, many of you entities that are communicating with you, we have been communicating with you that your vibration is rising. And notice that when your vibration rises, you begin to experience reality differently. You begin to see things that you did not see clearly before. You begin to see things that you perhaps found invisible before. That is also why we are learning that many of you have been going through different preparation stages for this heightening of vibration. And in this heightening of vibration, you may find that different phenomena of an extrasensory quality, different phenomena that relate to this miracle, that these actually become far more of an everyday like quality. And now we hear that a Christmas choir is beginning outside here in the surroundings. And we could say, with this notion of perfect timing, that this is exactly the type of enchantment permission slips that you are looking for. You are looking for your ability to enchant reality. And when you learn to enchant reality, you will be met there by things that you perceive in the outside. So notice that this is always the magical trick. This is always the bridge that you're trying to gap. It's this bridge of the skepticism. It's this bridge that you may think that something is impossible, and you may think that this thing that's impossible somehow needs to be brought to you from the outside. But that as we are working with you in an outside medium, that is, that we are coming to you, we are talking to you from a place that is indeed outside. That is, we're using a human voice, we're using these energetic channels to communicate with you. As we are talking to you from that, we are aware that we could say, short-circuiting your perception of reality. We are circumventing these codes that you have already been operating in, where you have to know how things have to happen. You have to have, let's call it, a ladder of belief systems, where you work from your current perception and into the perception that alien first contact is actually possible. And so what we do is simply that we promise you the miracle, and we see your vibration heightening. We see yourselves working yourselves up in excitement. We see you doing that thing we also know you do when you're having company, that you would like to feel at home. And that is, you prepare your home, you make your home of a nicer, cleaner vibration. You prepare it in ways that are very magical, very helpful, very beautiful to you. And we would like to let that be this magic that you are creating in this season, where you are gearing up for sharing the heart spaces with other human beings, that you are indeed in this, we could say, very sentimental holiday of your time. You are looking to create more of this telepathetic energy. And notice then what you are doing is that you are, for instance, undertaking a ritual of giving with the natural expectation of receiving. And you are undertaking the idea of ritual. That is, that you know that by following certain prescripts, by following certain disciplines, by following certain things as they are supposed to be done, you will find that certain things will come about. You are trying to create a certain lovely mood. Well, what you then also find we understand from interacting with you is that you also find that then these things that you can't quite bring into that creation of yours, that they are sort of sticking out, and then you may have to figure out a way for you to unify these fields. That is, rather, is it important for you to bring these energies into that Christmas miracle, or is it more important for you to put off the ritual and begin to create your own reality in different ways? Both ways are perfectly legitimate and helpful. So these are ways we can communicate with you on this. Then, our friend was talking about this little being that he found present in his energy system. And he has found him most enjoyable to work with, that he is still jumping up and down over here, as now he is seen and he is quite agitated. And what we will see is that these beings are indeed very connected to the unfolding of your attention. So the more you become aware of stirrings or shifts in time, the more you become aware of unwanted influences in your outside world, especially relating to technical stuff, especially related to things that have been tinkered with or are human creations, the more you become aware of your relationship to tasks, to having to do things, to appointments, the more you also become aware of your own mastery of these disciplines. And this is where these little helpers come in. That is, they are, as you perhaps know from also this approach to them as the machine elves, these are very much the little beings that are instrumental in ferreting ideas from the higher realms, from your higher self down into your lower manifest physical self, this receiving part of you. And as you receive here, you may sense that these beings are quite keen on you also being able to receive new emotions, new impulses, of not growing stuck, of remembering the natural flow of things. And this is also why you may then sense that they are quite engaged in convincing you that maybe you should pay a little more attention to the manifestations, the things you are interacting with, the way time is running for you. and maybe you should move more into a receptive mode of attention, trusting, knowing that things will work out for you, that you are not necessarily to discipline yourself, you are not necessarily to get lost in time or other places, but rather you should perhaps become aware that there are so many things stirring you, so many unknown factors, that the very fact that you're sitting here, breathing, understanding, relating, is in and of itself very helpful. We could say that here there is another element, because we sensed that there was on this body translating us just a fly landing between his eyebrows. And this indeed was that same element of this stirring of attention. You may sense that every time you grow somewhat stale in your habits, that you begin to not acknowledge the chaotic or uncontrollable forces that are present, that these beings will come around and they will begin to play with you. They will offer you the opportunity of unknown presence to wrap, and these will often seem like these wonderful ideas, these precognitions, we could almost call them, this sense of intuitive attraction towards something that is yet to unfold in your life. This is where they are encouraging you to go. So they are much as those flies that were just teasing us. They are a type of, let us say, composters of stale mental energy. And if they are honored, if they are understood, if they are acknowledged in their role, they are very happy to reward you with their pot of gold. Let that be the message as we hope that many miracles may find you, and we assure you that only you determine the limitations of the miracles that can happen in your beautiful life. With love, unconditional, with great enjoyment and gratitude for this co-creation of ours, I, Inyak of the Yahyel, I bid you farewell, and I send you love. That was a lot of fun for me. I hope you enjoyed that, guys. So yes, much love to you out there.